It's lights out and away we go.
Hello everyone, welcome to our podcast.
We are your hosts Harshit Das
And Ashish Panda.
It's a podcast on F1 motorsport.
We are gonna cover everything related to F1 world.
So sit back and enjoy listening to us.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of It's Lights Out and Away We Go podcast. So the Australian GP just wrapped up. I am recording this episode right immediately after the Grand Prix. I'll try to keep it as raw as I can, unedited. Unfortunately, my co-host isn't there with me right now, so I guess you'll just have to hear me ranting about the Australian Grand Prix. So we have our winner Charles Leclerc, who won comfortably for Ferrari, and overall I think the race was a good one, but then there were many boring phases where everyone kind of felt a bit sleepy. So to begin with the weekend, I think into the weekend everyone knew it would again be a Ferrari and Red Bull battle, and so it was quite kind of expected to see these two teams and their 4 drivers in total fighting it out in front. And porpoising still is an issue for many of the cars. The Ferrari was wildly bouncing in the practice sessions and in the qualifying, but they somehow managed to have the pace to get P1. And unfortunately, Carlos Sainz, the red flag timings and his final lap, he didn't really manage to put it together, and so he qualified 9th. So it was a bit disappointing for him as well as for Ferrari, because they could have easily gotten in 1 and 2. And I think in the weekend, Verstappen and Perez, I think Perez was a bit more comfortable with the car, but I think in the end it was Verstappen who managed to out-qualify Perez. And so that's how it was for qualifying and all. And Seb Vettel, he finally made a comeback after missing out 2 races because of COVID-19, and he, you could say, had a nightmare of a weekend. He had too many car issues, less mileage in the car for the Australian Grand Prix, and even today in the race it was a disaster for him. He crashed out. So it was a weekend to forget for Seb Vettel. And now moving on to the race. 5 red lights go out, the race starts. The front runners Verstappen, Leclerc, they get off very well. Leclerc manages to stay in the lead. Verstappen tried to catch him, couldn't. But Hamilton, he somehow managed to get a very good start, and I think he then moved up to P3, and that was mainly because of his good start as well as amazing positioning that gave him the P3 position, because Perez was ahead of him, but he couldn't really do anything much around the outside. So it was Hamilton who then popped into P3, and Russell, he made a cheeky move inside the corner and he went past Norris. So overall it was a good start for Hamilton, and Perez could have made a better start, but then he really couldn't do anything around the outside. But later on he did manage to overtake Hamilton on lap 10, and then it was a kind of a scrap for them. And later on, when they came into during the pit stop phase, that time Hamilton pitted and he came out of Perez. But then again, Perez, I think because of the better car as well as Perez, he managed to overtake Hamilton again. But George Russell over there got a bit lucky because of a safety car. The moment he was coming into the pits, the safety car was called out, and Russell managed to get a cheap pit stop, and hence he came out of both Hamilton and Perez. Now moving on to the race leader, it was, I would say, a pretty comfortable race for him, as he was easily ahead of the rest of the field, around 15 seconds, 17 seconds ahead of the field. There were total 2 safety cars during the race, and during the second safety car, during the restart, Verstappen and Leclerc, they did kind of have a chance to battle it, but then Leclerc somehow managed to maintain the lead, and thus that guaranteed him the win. And moving on to Verstappen, he was performing well, but he wasn't really as close to Leclerc as he should have been, made because of the car or because he couldn't actually follow. But then in the end, like, his engine gave up. There were some engine issues. The car's engine overheated and hydraulic fluid leaked, so he had to retire. Another bad weekend for Red Bull. And Perez actually got worried, and he asked his engineer, like, hey, what's up with Max's car? And the engineer was like, you don't need to worry about it. But I think he was actually worried about it because in Bahrain also, like, Max's car went out first, and there was supposedly nothing should have gone wrong with Perez's car, but on the final lap his engine went off, he locked up, and his race was ruined. So yeah, he was worried, but fortunately he did manage to finish second. And now moving on to George Russell for Mercedes, the pit stop, I think the pit stop under the safety car was really helpful for him, so he moved up to P3. And in the end, like, Hamilton really didn't fight it, or he didn't have the performance he needed to fight Russell, so it was a good P3 and first podium of Russell with Mercedes, and many more to come. Down the field, Haas and Alfa Romeo, I would say it was a bit underwhelming, because these two were initially expected to not be in the points and all, but in the previous races they managed to like score P5, P6. Initially it was a bit underwhelming, but Valtteri Bottas, who unfortunately ended his streak of 103 consecutive Q3 appearances in qualifying this time, he kind of had a bad start initially, and he was, in the out of points for most of it, but somehow after pit stops and all, he managed to get back into the points, and he managed to finish P8, which is pretty respectable for an Alfa Romeo. And he did have to battle it out with Pierre Gasly and of course Lance Stroll and Bottas. They did try to battle it out initially, where Lance Stroll pushed Valtteri Bottas off the track, and that ended up that helped Stroll more or less got him a 5-second penalty, because of which he toppled down the order, and Gasly somehow managed to overtake Stroll. So at this point, Bottas was behind Gasly, but then again Gasly made a mistake into the final corner before starting another lap. He went in too deep, went on the grass. Bottas was like, thanks for the position, I'll take it happily. Norris and Ricciardo, the McLarens were finally back. I think, yeah, you could say best of the rest, 5th and 6th. Norris and Ricciardo, finally a decent enough race for the Honey Badger in his home race. So that was good to see. Like, McLaren, after their dismal performances in the first 2 rounds, the third round proved to be better for them. And Mercedes, I'd say it was a good race for them. Like, initially it wouldn't have been, but then P3 and P4 is a very good result for them considering the position they are in, and they were supposed to bring some upgrades to the car but decided not to. I think they'll be bringing it in Imola, and let's just hope that the performance improves, because of course I am a bit biased towards Mercedes, but yeah, it's good to see new winners in terms of only Leclerc winning. But there was some action going on down the field, and moving on to Alpine had a very volatile performance, and as my co-host sent me a message saying that Alpine had a race as volatile as the crypto markets. So yeah, they had a volatile weekend. And Albon for Williams, he managed to score a point. This guy, he didn't change the tires. Like, he changed for, I think, once during the first safety car, and that was it. He somehow made his hard tires last 56 laps, and that got him a single point. So I think these were the first points for Williams. Overall, the Australian Grand Prix was a pretty decent Grand Prix, and many teams had many different takeaways. Red Bull really needs to be focusing on their power units, and they'll have to see what they can do with their power units, because they are new into this segment, although Honda is helping them. But in the first race, with both of their cars DNFing because of the engine issues, and now again Max Verstappen, I think he'll be a bit more, what we can say, flustered at the engineers and the people developing the engine, because it's the second time he is having these engine issues, and if these keep continuing, I don't think he'll be able to take another title so easily. And Mercedes and Ferrari, they still need to get around their porpoising issue. Actually, all teams need, but the porpoising issue was pretty evident on both the Ferraris and the Mercedes, although Ferrari didn't get hampered by the issue a lot. But overall, I think Mercedes, they need to hope that their upgrades that they'll be bringing for Imola actually help them out, and they can start fighting for podiums more consistently and with more confidence. Yeah, for the race review podcast, I think that was it from my side. I've covered more or less everything. Now I can't just go on lap by lap ranting around what happened. For that, you guys need to watch the races. And yeah, that's it for the Australian Grand Prix review. And see you guys in the next one for the Imola Grand Prix.